Right, welcome to the H Radio 223 part-timers for your this week's online lessons. That's your online lesson. I'll see you next week once again for a live class. Please also note that, whenever you do want to contact me for any assistance in general with the subject matter or the F1s, you've got my phone number. Please do so. All right, so let's start with the first lesson of this week out of three that we're going to pre-record. So you know that you need to go through it. So this is lesson 14. We'll do 14, 15, and 16. Advanced content creation for H Radio 223, and it comes from Next Level Radio, chapter 3.5 and chapter 6.2, page 430 to 444. Right, so 3.5 covers informative and entertaining content, 94 to 108, and then FUBby, which is a bit of methodology, a kind of a construct that we can approach or use to approach creating like great content. Okay, all right. So as you can see, there's quite a few slides to go through. What I am going to do is play one video from in between all of this, just for a bit of a bit of a break from the slides, and then we'll carry on and complete the lesson. Okay, so a radio it needs to be one of three things, one or all. It's got to be informative, it's got to be entertaining, and it's got to be educational, right? So we can obviously contrast each one of those for any particular reason why we would do anything on air, right? So, for example, music is entertaining. Let's say a call out and a content piece is both informative, it could be educating, and it still needs to be entertaining as well, because the definition of entertainment is to distract, right? So the better the distraction, the better quality that particular piece of content actually is. So we want to be able to look at everything that we do. Like, for example, like an advert that we play, it should be well, obviously crafted and well produced, well scripted to be informative enough so it can be helpful or useful in what it intends to do, right? What it intended to do was to sell like a bed or clothing, whatever it may have been, right? You can actually literally do anything, like apply this to anything that you do here. And when I say see and touch, you might be thinking of the socials, right? That a radio is connected to or has obviously expanded to radio stations, right? So what makes content informative, entertaining? Well, radio must keep the listener or user, right? So a user online, listener on air, right? Okay. User engaged and listening for as long as possible. So I want to increase that time spent listening. The longer you can keep the listener engaged, the more advertising they're going to hear because they're going to go and wisp through those particular ad breaks, the spot breaks. And so the thing is that, and so that's what advertisers want. They want the advertisements of their spots to be actually heard, right? And subliminally will be applied, or more, obviously, it will be more relevant to a person who needs that product or is seeking something of this sort or didn't know that they needed, but now they know they want because it's at a special price. Right. So we want them to listen to those ads because that's how we run a radio station. Right. The results in better return on investment, ROI for the client. Remember, we said they don't promise them a return on investment in terms of money. Promise them something like, again, there's more, like, there's going to be more traffic in your store. People are going to subscribe to your newsletter. People are going to follow your pages. People are going to definitely, like, they're going to once again want and buy your product, maybe from an online store. Who knows, right? So we don't promise them an actual monetary amount in terms of return on investment, like you're going to make so much as you would in the corporate world if you invest in some kind of like let's say, as I said, like a system or a restructuring of bringing in a consultant, restructuring of a department or whatever it is, right? Okay, so what goes in radio or on shows or podcasts, right? Every product goes through, well, four phases according to Tracy Johnson, right? We must say that. And again, this is his point of view. It is kind of, in my opinion, it does apply, but not always. I mean, it doesn't make sense. to say one methodology might work for all things that do happen on radio. So we're going to explore, just as a disclaimer, this is Tracy Johnson's approach to what a show might go through, right, in different life cycle stages, the introduction, the growth, the maturity, and the decline phase there. The product or service life cycle makes the following three assumptions. One, that products have a limited life cycle. For example, like a show or a team has a limited life cycle, which it really does. We need to be able to change the lineup and the construct of the way that we decide to put shows together and people on the shows and so on and so forth, and the actual scheduling or whatever it may be. We have to we refresh that from time to time, right? A time can be over, when I say time, it could be over an extended period. So, in other words, if the show has run its course and it's just now, it's becoming quote unquote dry and it's dead. So, in terms of that, we'd have to replace, let's say, that show with someone that is a bigger name or a more, I'm going to say a bigger name, a more popular name for that current state of the station and its listeners, please. That's very important to note. Where is the listener at? Because it might be 5, 6, 7, 10 years that have passed now. And we've got the same breakfast show, for example, the same drive show, the same brunch show, doesn't matter. Right, we have to also adapt to that. Having noted that, be aware of too many adaptations and changes will destruct your radio station. The successive sales of that product go through four stages, and these will offer they all offer each of these phases here: the introduction, the growth, the maturity, and the decline. Offer different challenges and opportunities that we can actually go and take. Right, so challenges we must remember about positive and negative risks. Opportunities are positive risks, and challenges are negative risks. Right, so in every phase the business has to work on different strategies to ensure that the success of the product is at a top notch style, right? So, what goes into radio, and again, in podcast, radio shows are no different from this particular life cycle. And you can check out the seminar. It's supposed to suck at first. I'm not going to play it because it's quite a long video and it actually takes you through what we are going to discuss here, right? Okay. And so you can, if you want another, because I'm literally doing the lesson, I'm saying in verbal audio communication, whatever it may be, it is always better to not better, it's better to always go and look at more sources of information. In this case, it's coming straight from the horse's mouth. So Tracy himself will present a particular, I think it's about 25 or 27 minutes, I'm not sure. Right. And you can go watch there to take you through this particular full phase process of a particular show, the life cycle, right? So what's the introduction phase about? Well, it's when you are, for example, like going on a date and you're meeting someone for the first time. When a show comes up and it's new, it's brand new, or a show has moved, or should I say, a DJ has moved to a different time slot, like that particular audience, because there's different audiences at different time slots, right? Is going to be new to them, and also the presenters is going to be new to that particular time slot. So we're kind of starting that kind of blind date in the beginning of our building our relationship with them at the same time. So you need to know that this is quite a long process to be able to what's the word I'm looking for? It's garner, right? Like garner some kind of trust with the listener and build a relationship as you would not 18 months with. So now I'm going to break away from that kind of that metaphor, whatever it is, of the blind date, right? And now we're going to just look at the relevance of why it takes 18 months. It's nearly 2 years that this introduction phase can take, right? Where yes, up to, I said, up to, not always, up to, where the listener is trying to know the people on air. Please excuse my snort, right? Obviously, you can hear that my sinuses are all over the place, right? Okay. Okay, the list of things you would need to not discuss definitely in the introductory phase is one, religion, politics. Your sexual history should never be discussed, one, and your controversial worldviews Embarrassing topics, so you got to be calculated because as you grow within the industry as a broadcaster in a show as well, you need to be able to find some, again, that trust that allows you from the listener's side to be able to say, listen, I want to go into something a little bit more taboo, like a little bit more like touchy-feely, you know? And they'll say, sure, why not? We trust you so much already. Let's talk about, let's say, some politics. Let's talk about religion. It's open, and we know that you've created a safe space to be able to, obviously lay a platform to move forward with things like that. In the beginning, it's not really that clever to be trying to make a name for yourself, quote unquote, through controversy. So list the things that you would most likely discuss, things that are things that you have in common, like songs you've heard, favorite types of entertainment, so like streaming or streaming music or movies or this, whatever it may be. Or maybe you're entertained by theater, or you're entertained by gaming, or whatever it may be. General relationship topics. So, general does not mean boring, please. At any one point when we are creating content, I've said also to you, I'm going to say to you again and again that it has to be particular, right? So, in terms of like a general relationship topic, can be about when, for example, like a relationship has just kind of gone dry. In other words, like you've been at this for a long time and there is just no spark anymore, right? And according to a recent survey in 2025 done by so again, I'm kind of making it contextually relevant to how people have responded in ridiculous ways to revive kind of that spark and that energy, whatever it may be, right? That lust in their relationship. That's a general relationship topic, right? General lifestyle topics and personal observations about the shared space that you have with the listener, right? Um, that you're both inhibiting in the moment, right? Okay, the percentage of what happens in the introduction phase, again, as a so per hour for a new show, 35% promotion. So in other words, so being able to cross promote and make sure that you run ads and make sure that you are running competitions which are scheduled for you. Anyway, this is not your choice as it is. I'm saying when it comes to promotions, like you have to do what is said to you. 35% features and benchmarks, right? So creating something fun, something that people can latch onto, like a feature that happens every single day at a certain time, or every single week at a certain time, and it's about something, right? It's something that can latch onto and create a lifestyle clock, right? A schedule around that, right? Benchmarks, for example, news, etc., must be included where they need to be, right? Lifestyle and relationships at 20, and your personal observation, which is always important at any phase, right? Because otherwise, why do we hire you at the end of the day, right? So that's the recommendation of. Um, here's a breakdown of that. So it comes also from your books. You can have a look at Next Level Radio. You'll see obviously this picture there. For example, station and promotion is information about what is happening on the station, in your city, your country, and the world, and what is happening on the show, right? So features benchmarks have entertaining, engaging, relevant, and relatable features or benchmark moments where listeners play along, such as games, for example. Once again, gain their trust, make it simple, make it useful, make it important, make it informative, make it entertaining, right? So relationship content include relatable relationship discussions. I'm talking too fast here. So okay, so remember, relationships can be with your co-workers, with your boss, with kind of again the dynamics between you and the world around you. It doesn't always have to be you and a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You can't say I'm doing bunny quotes, but I am, right? So it isn't about that. We're talking about relationships, connections with people, and everything that goes in between, right? So lifestyle content, again, kind of just bridged under relationship 20% as well, bridged together. Um, Obviously about common lifestyle and then personal observations. And it's not what we do here. So, for example, like here, this I don't agree with. So just because it doesn't make any sense for me, and I've been looking at it for a while, I'm saying, in other words, a couple of years. to be able to, let's say a personal observation is one link, makes a sense. A personal observation needs to be included, for example, within your content that you go and create there as well. So, yes, it might be 10%. It's a small amount of each one of these things, right? Your own personal impression that you do give. And I would please, I'm going to, like I'm saying, for relevant, actual accuracy, please don't apply this obviously in real life. It is going to be a combination of all of these things together, one way or another, that you can split up during your particular hour in that show, right? The growth phase. So whenever I'm just going to disclaim here, no shame, and it's fine. Like whenever we come to this particular breakdown in the other phases, I'm also going to just skip over it. All right. Please, once again, I'm going to explain why. So the percent I agree with, it's fine. It makes sense, right? As you grow through different phases, but the links, these are combinatively relevant or productive and produced. In other words, they we'd use a combination again of we could do a feature that revolves around relationships or lifestyles. We can do a promotion that has to do with again lifestyle of the station. Sorry, I just need to go blow my nose. Just give me a second, yeah? Yeah. I brought tissue with me, so just think it's just have to blow my nose again. I can just blow it. I just pause it again, blow it, and then whatever as it is. Okay, I was ranting about this over here, right? Okay, and I make sense, and I can I don't mind being challenged by other lecturers, whatever it may be. I that's completely what I stand by. Please, right? Okay, if you are ever, please note that if you are ever tested on this, so it comes up within a formative assessment. Please, won't you stick to what is in the textbook, right? Okay, just because you mark according to theory that you are provided with. The growth phase, this is the stage of the relationship where you have gotten to know the listener better. So you and the listener know each other. They kind of know your personality. They also, and you have gotten to know what type of listener is attached to your particular show. And this is the phase where you are falling in love with each other and each other's flaws, right? They actually like your flaws as a quirk. And you also understand the temperament of your particular listener. So you start to share more personal information, potentially more embarrassing stories, some of your more controversial beliefs or worldviews. Again, I restate that radio is much more complex than these five things that you see here, right? So your personal opinions begin to matter more. They trust obviously your observations, again, your ability to be able to present something with objectivity, but also your input does matter for them because and to them because you are a voice for the people. Do you understand? So when you do speak openly, remember you're speaking for on the account of your listener, right? On account for or yeah, your listener, right? So you become more intimate again with your quote unquote partner, really. The on-air presenter's personal observation makes up more of the content offering, and they begin to open up more emotionally. There is a breakdown of how it starts to change 20% to 30% with features. 25% of the time of the time is related around this over here. 20% is around personal observation, 5% is your heart. So include your own emotion. Now we see something new here. Skip over that, please. Right. We get to the third phase, the maturity phase. Remember, so again, now we're taking one show just to kind of give the context once again so we know that we're on track, right? We're taking the context of a growing show from like with the team there as well, with their listener, and we're seeing where you can, let's say, so what happens is once again, you have to learn the basics to be able to do anything with them afterwards. Once you learn the basics, your ability to be a great broadcaster is how you construct new ways of doing radio by combining and mixing up and but all in a really great ordered way, and it's fresh and it's new and it's layered and whatever it may be, right? You're allowed to do what you want on air. Right, I'm saying to you within the context of the BTCSA and in your license, right? But you must go there and you must try new things, right? With everything that you do know. So as again, we're moving through the life cycle of a particular show. And at the end there, yes, we're going to see there now, in the decline phase, there could be the opportunity to end the show completely, right? We look at the Rams, we look at what's going on, do the focus groups, and we say, okay, let's make the change, right? Or we can refresh an approach and start, quote unquote, all over again in a way by kind of reversing time, right? That has passed and you'll see in a moment. So in this phase, the radio show has reached the point where new growth is generally small, right? Because the thing is, the base listenership is quite large and they also are committed. We tune in regularly. That is robust and valuable because we want people to tune in every time we are on air. So yes, the station is one, but as a show, different completely. We want those people, the fans. It's we call it like what's your club? Like yeah, I'm going to use soccer as example, right? So, for example, soccer, if we had a soccer club, think of all the people that would attend it, everyone that's interested or invested within, let's say, soccer. So, we've got the fans there, obviously, right? We got, let's say, kids that play soccer. We have soccer moms, we have coaches, we have sponsors, we have professional soccer players then as well. And we have personal trainers, I'm saying sports nutritionists, so everything that revolves around what brings them together under that soccer club. And so you are also creating your own club when you are starting a show, right? Different people from different sides of the spectrum of your target audience, right? They are coming together because they like what you and your show has to offer. If a show is declining in listenership, you should see, obviously, you'll typically see it here in the growth phase, right? Which is not great. So because that's bad. That's bad form. But this phase here, again, the maturity phase is where advertisers get the best bang for their buck. Because again, this particular show is impactful, right? We've grown through to three phases now. Again, there's the percentage of, and you can have a look at that yourself. I don't want to repeat myself, right? And just note that obviously there's a change in like focus on just on the side there. You'll see that these change right over time. Okay, so let's say do the decline phase. We'll go to video and then we'll come back. Right. So the decline phase, this is the phase that every radio station or radio presenter dreads. The phase where the audience responses or response begins to actually wait, get a little bit bored. You are becoming stale, and that's also maybe it's also your fault. Like do something new. You can attempt that. There might be you might be so comfortable in what you think works for that listener that you get stuck in a bit of a cycle and you get stuck and you don't know what to do and you should know what to do because you should be on top of your show and on top of those listeners, right? The number and ratings start to fall, the listeners begin to move away to something fresher, right? When the show begins to reach this phase, it's an excellent idea to rest the show. In other words, maybe put it to bed, right? This could mean removing certain characters, so certain people that are part of that particular team, or replacing the DJ, for example. So if it's a one-person show, like a solo show, then we might have to replace the DJ. Might, again. We have to try other. A strategic manager knows that there are other options to try before firing the talent. Okay. Unless everyone's saying, listen, we hate your DJ, please take them off, right? Then just do what the listeners say. Every show has an expiry date, and to escape this expiry date, one needs to adapt and change things up. So, for example, level one, the level involves content such as storytelling. So, at the heart of great pieces of radio content lies a compelling story. So, knowing that you need to be able to focus on like tugging at their heartstrings in any way, your heart feels many things. The metaphorical heart, I'm saying, not the physical one, right? So, your metaphorical heart feels many emotions. It's not just, oh, like when you say heartstrings, it doesn't mean, oh, you've touched me in a way that is now like making me going to feel warm and fuzzy. Everything that our heart goes through, our hearts go through, is a good place to always start, even from the very beginning, right? I'm saying that when you start off with your show, make sure that you're entering very with a lot of um cautiousness, right? You can't just say boom, boom, bam, bam, whatever it is, like on a first date. Let's just use that anecdote, that metaphor again. Like you're not going to tell and spill the beans or ask them about their childhood trauma. Like, I mean, come on now, you know what I mean, right? So you slowly, but it's still we get if we don't start with initiating a heart connection in the first phase, the introduction phase, then you don't have anywhere to go. I'm saying after that, they spark imagination and they enthrall and delight stories now, right? Stories also add an opportunity for dramatic moments to appear on the show. A second level they can look at is that it should involve content such as features, benchmarks, and other recurring pieces of content. And they include entertaining, exciting, recurring content that adds structure to the listening experience. So nothing new, I'm saying, so far from what we've heard in the previous phases, but now you got to look at it from a new perspective. Okay. So a fresh point of view, fresh approach, build it up so you can push the lifestyle life span of the show as long as possible, right? You will again, excuse me, it's going to end sooner or later, right? I'm not laughing at that. That's just the way the world works. Okay, this level in number three, this level will then consist of generic content, filler material, so teasers, like live promos and so on and so forth, right? So here we go. In the decline phase, so level one, storytelling 60%, level two, 20% features, and 10% for generic content. Okay, again, skipping over. And what makes a winning radio show? We're going to come back in a moment. Let's have a look at this video that I'm going to share. It's quite a cool one. Yeah, so this one over here. Let me just quickly, as you know, it's going to take a little bit of time here to load. It's coming up now.
Are you in the enviable position of having your own radio show? Perhaps you're a broadcaster, you're a radio presenter, you're a podcaster, but it's easy enough to just put that fader up and say the same things again and again. That's this song, and now we've got this song coming up. But that's boring, right? We want to talk about more interesting things as broadcasters than just that. Well, in this video, I'm going to give you 5 solid themes that you can implement into your links or to your show content to make it really interesting, and also some great cheats of how you can kind of, without feeling hugely creative, steal some other people's ideas. So, if that sounds good, let's get stuck in. My name's James Mulvaney. I'm founder of Radio.co, Podcast.co and Matchmaker.fm, all doing really interesting things in the broadcasting and audio spaces, so go and check them out if you'd like to. Also, I'm always making videos like this one for broadcasters and podcasters on this channel, so remember to turn on your notifications, bing, hit that subscribe button for updates and all that good stuff. You know the drill. So our first topic for discussion is actually something that's been around for ages, and something you probably think doesn't sound very interesting, but actually can be, is the news. Now, everyone wants to listen to the news because it is just that, it's news. It means you're never going to be short on supply of information and things to talk about because there's new news every single day. That's why it's called the news, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to be boring, and I'm not saying you need to turn into a news reporter to be able to discuss what is going on right now. It could be celebrity news, it can be entertainment news, it could be news about what's happening in your local area, or it could even be satire news. But ultimately, think about the news as something that's an infinite and readily and really fresh source of information, of areas of topic of discussion that you might want to go into as a presenter. And ultimately, it is your job as a broadcaster to inform, educate and delight. And the inform part really is covered off by the news. So There's no harm in discussing the news. Bear in mind, if you're broadcasting on a regulated radio station, you might need to comply with certain rules and regulations. For example, if you're on terrestrial radio, FM, DAB, etc., yes, you can't talk about everything you want to talk about. However, if you're broadcasting online, the sky's really the limit. There's nothing you can and can't talk about. No one's going to slap your wrist if you say something about politics, for example. However, news is always a good thing to start off with. So here are some ideas of things that you can talk about to make your show more interesting when it comes to the news. Standard thing, today's top headlines. It's always going to get listeners' attention. People always want to know what today's top headlines are, whether they're local, national, international, etc. How about good, positive or heartwarming news from today? We all know that the news is kind of filled with a lot of doom and gloom these days, but if you can bring some positivity to the airwaves, it's a good thing, and it will help get listeners on your side and kind of cheer up their day a little bit. Weirdest headlines of the month. Now that kind of sounds a bit strange, and again you can kind of leverage satire news sites, I think, sometimes, because if you look at websites like The Onion or the Daily Mash, there's some really funny stuff on there, which is obviously fake, so you need to kind of declare that and make that obvious. But sometimes going along that kind of comedy route can be quite fun. News can even just be reporting on what's happening in the local area. So it could be best things to do this weekend in your local town or city, stuff to do that evening, etc. You get the general idea. Is there any seasonal events happening? News can be top 5, so it could be like top 5 crazy celebrity headlines this week. Or it could even be deals or offers or vouchers for local restaurants or cinemas or theatres. Talk about what offers are available, what people can actually go out and take action on. If there's a new business just opened, why not give them a shout out? You see what I mean? It's just reporting on what's going on right now, which is relevant to your audience. Obviously, if you're on, like a dance music radio station which broadcasts all over the world, you probably won't be talking about what's going on right here in Manchester, for example. However, you might be reporting what's happening on the global stage in terms of DJs. It's about tailoring the news to your audience and making sure that it's captivating. You keep it entertaining, keep it light, make it interesting, and also try and make it a bit more positive. Next up, I wanted to talk about music. Now, pretty much every radio station plays music, unless perhaps you're on talk radio. We know that, right? But so many radio presenters, so many radio hosts don't really bother talking about the music they're playing. Sure, like I said earlier, you might get that was this song, and this is that song. But they never really share their opinions on the song. So it's never like, I really like that because of XYZ. So think about what your listeners are actually tuning in for. Yes, they're tuning in to listen to music, but they're not just tuning in to listen to music. They're also tuning in to listen to you, which is really crucial. So think about how you, the host, the personality, can link in with that music, and how can you tell stories with that music. Also think about creating different themes based on the music you're playing. Like if you look at Spotify, they are absolutely brilliant at this. Head to Spotify. I'm sure most of the other streaming platforms have this as well. You go into browse, you don't just find playlists based on genre now. You'll find playlists based on decades and genres on that decade. So you might have like easy listening 00's pop, okay? Or noughties pop rather. You might have like heavy rock from the 90s. But they've gone beyond this. So they'll have like music for working out, music for in the car, music for home, music for work. They'll have genres, they'll have sub-genres. So they have this real kind of way of describing and kind of combining music into different themes. So if you're going to apply this to your radio station and it's the middle of summer, you might have like, these are my top 10 barbecue bangers, sizzling barbecue bangers, or you might have like, these are my top 5 songs to cure the winter blues, or you might have my top 5 alternative Christmas songs. But you as the personality or the presenter have got that choice. You can actually guide people along a pathway and kind of emote a feeling or create a sort of a response or an emotion based on what you're trying to do. It doesn't just have to be playing songs at random and just introing and outroing them. There's so much more you can talk about with music. Also, I think music can be incredibly nostalgic. So a couple of great features that I always think just seem to go down really well with listeners is things like golden hours, platinum hours. So when you play songs, from a specific decade, or you might say like rewind the chart. So I used to do a show called Chart Rewind, and basically we pick a year between I think it was 2000 and 2010, so it wasn't rewinding it that far, but it was for a fairly young audience, and you'd pick a month and a year and you'd kind of play songs which were in the top 10 for that month and a year. If you're DJing to an older audience, you might say go back to the sort of 70s or 60s and play, music that was on the chart, say in October in 1978 or whatever it might be. Again, you can filter down based on genre. It doesn't have to necessarily just be the top 10, but that's a great way of really kind of, I suppose, awakening that nostalgia that we all have with music. And it's a really exciting way of presenting music that isn't just, that was this song and that was this song. Taking people down that timeline is always good fun, I think. So next up is TV and films. TV and films is something that we're all passionate about. Pretty much everyone watches the TV these days. Everyone watches movies and everyone uses the streaming websites. And everyone talks about them. You constantly, if you're down a bar or in a restaurant with your friends or down the pub, what are you talking about? The latest Netflix documentary, or you're talking about a box set that you've binge watched. So you can easily take this content and translate it into on-air content, and it's really simple to do. Think about maybe talking about a top 10 Netflix series to binge watch right now, or it could be best Christmas films of all time if you want to do something seasonal. It could be, here is our favourite guilty pleasure chick flicks and rom-coms. Think about this, it's easy content to create. What is the scariest movie ever? You can get listeners engaged with this, you can encourage communication, you can encourage that inward discussion from your listeners, which is crucial, I think, to radio. And of course, it's something you can get really, really passionate about. But it doesn't have to necessarily be limited to what's going on in the movies. As I mentioned, what was on last night's TV, what was on Netflix at the moment, what's on YouTube even. There's certain videos that you think are really worth watching online. There is literally an infinite amount of content here. And if you go on websites like IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and there's various Netflix websites where you can literally go in and steal their ideas, like ethically take their ideas of content. And so, like, for example, Rotten Tomatoes, they might have like a top 25 list of slasher films, or they might have, Netflix series that everyone watches. They might even want to go down the retro route, like I mentioned with music. You could even talk about stuff that's been and gone. So, for example, like recently I've just rewatched loads of Friends episodes. Or it might be that, you remembering a movie from a film star who's just passed away. So, for example, it could be that Sean Connery's just passed away. What were the best Bond films that Sean Connery won? Who was the best Bond of all time? There's so many different things that you can talk about relating to film and TV on the radio, and create really, really immersive content for your listeners. Okay, number 4 is the internet and social media. Now, the internet and social media is one of these things that we didn't have the luxury of as radio presenters sort of even 15 years ago. It really hadn't taken off to the level where you can really detect what's going on in real time right now. But it is so important that you're connected to this as a radio host. And of course, there's going to be, just like the other things I mentioned, almost an infinite amount of topics and discussion material that you can easily access. Just go on sites like Reddit. Go on sites like BuzzFeed. Even using Twitter and looking at what is currently trending can be a fantastic source of discussion. And actually, you can use people's comments and people's engagement and people's discussion that's going on online to really evoke that discussion and evoke those talking points with your listeners and your audience as a radio host. You could always be talking about what is going on social media right now. So what videos are doing the rounds? There's always going to be like one of the videos that's being shared around on Snapchat or Instagram or, social media platforms. The sorts of videos I'm talking about, the sort of stuff that gets shared around all of your friends. Well, why not share that with your listener as well? And sometimes you can even play the video. Obviously, you need to check for rights and things, but, sometimes you can get away with playing clips of videos on air. And certain videos will work better than others because some videos are really about what's going on. You need to be visually watching it, in which case your presenter is to describe it and perhaps even react to it. But some videos are heavily reliant on audio, let's be honest, so they can make great translations directly from the screen online to the airwaves. Okay, so my final topic of conversation for your show really is sports. Now, everyone's huge sports fans, right? And it's so easy to talk about sports, talking about what sports are just happening. And again, it's one of these things, it's a bit like the news. There's always going to be conversation around the topic of sports. Sometimes it's controversial, sometimes it's just a case of here are the results. Sometimes it's a case of what has this guy said or what has this person done. But there's always going to be things to talk about in terms of sports. Can you believe that last result? I thought they were going to do much better than they did, or they completely thrashed them. Whatever it might be, there's always topics to talk about there. One of the things I've noticed about radio It used to be quite common that the news would be read and they would have a dedicated person to read the sport. That's very seldom, few and far between now. I don't see that happening often at all. So as a radio presenter, that can potentially open up doors, and it's really easy to report on sports because all you've got to do is fire up the internet, go to your favourite sports sites, and again find out stuff that might be relevant to your audience. For example, there's no point of talking to an American audience about cricket. Likewise, there's not much point of talking to a UK audience about, American football or baseball. But obviously, there's going to be common ground between those two audiences. So again, it's finding a sort of sports that's relevant for your audience, and just reporting on it. Or if you don't want to go down the reporting scores thing, talk about gossip that's happening in the industry. So there we have it. 5 interesting topics that can really breathe some energy and breathe some life into any radio show. Whether or not you go into detail about talking to one of them or just kind of sprinkle them all evenly throughout your links. If you can master talking about these 5 topics, and if you can master really researching and finding information to talk about on these 5 topics, I guarantee you're never ever going to be short of content, and you're never going to be sending listeners away without feeling like they've really got some kind of value or entertainment or education from your show. Thanks very much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and remember...
Right, okay, so I'm going to stop the share there. Good ideas. No, yes, I am going to stop the share there. And we go back and close up with lesson 14. Okay, hope again, once again, that you've just gotten something fresh and new. It's always great to go look at YouTube and go see what somebody is saying at the end of the day, right? And always a great place to always like as YouTube is just like endless amounts of assistance, help, content, ideas, and so on and so forth. Let's quickly close up this lesson now and move on to what makes a winning radio show. So it follows what Tracy Johnson calls a series of one, and this involves executing one thing on the show. So every quarter, so every 15 minutes, that commands the listener's attention. So for example, like a teaser, like we're going to tell them what's going to come up. We back announce a song, we tell them what's coming up, or within every 50, so a combination. So let's say we did tease in the first 15 minutes. In the second 15 minutes, we should do the content piece. You understand that we promise to actually give them at the end of the day. Right, so every 15 minutes, something that's going to do something to command, like get their attention, right? Every hour that causes a definite emotive response. So, in other words, making sure that somewhere in that hour, I have managed to either make them laugh, make them get a little bit like, not aggressively, but aggressively passionate about something. Maybe also give them some solace, like accompany them in something, make them feel safe and, whatever it may be, guarded. So something that gives us an opportunity to make them feel an emotion, right? That sticks with them. If you make someone feel something, they'll remember you for sure. Even if you upset them, for sure. If you upset them, well, they're gonna remember you, right? Right. Per day, that audience would share with their friends. Did you hear that moment? In other words, like once a day, so every single show, they should be able to say, "I love that interview. I laughed so much when I heard that particular clip that he played or she played, or I loved this particular, like today's like classic throwback, whatever it may be, right?" Like it can come in many different forms. You don't have to change their lives. Uh, make them stop, collaborate, and listen. Right? It just has to be something that connects really well enough for them to say, "Ah, like props to." Let me go comment on the page, or let me comment in their profile. Every 3 months, that person, okay, or that people should be able, their listeners must remember the show by something that you did, and every year at least one thing that makes your show legendary. So really think out the box and really like work hard making something happen and go out and make it happen, right? To help in the planning of the show format, well, here's a list of content types that are typically found on successful music radio shows. One is character stories. So, in other words, your own stories or someone's story that is part of your team or someone that is a guest on the show or a listener's story. These are all characters on the show, right? Serialized content, in other words, content that can follow from the previous day. So we do, let's say, part one, part two, part three, part four, like here on the PBS stations, right? We can also, again, obviously implement that on music or radio in many different ways. As I said, at the moment that you learn how to do something like create content, you can go wild with it, go mad, and find a way to present it in a more like ingenious way out of studio recordings or live crossings, right? So like make sure that you have someone on the field somewhere, like at an event or at a political rally or at the opening of something, and just like quickly call them, and quickly call them and say, listen, what's happening there? Give us an update. Listen to games and features, right? Guest interviews, phone topics, in other words, so being able to make sure that they interact with you either on WhatsApp or not particularly online. I wouldn't say this is particularly. Let's move to interaction with the studio itself. So phone into studio, produce sketches and parodies, holidays and events. So, for example, like is seasonal, right? Content, Christmas, Easter, Valentine's Day, New Year's. And then you can also look at events, concerts, sports events, etc. Something new and buzzworthy, and videos and viral pieces. There's no excuse to ever say, "Oh, I don't know what to do," right? So the gifts system, first we get to before we get to Fubby, the gift system says, look at this, and here's some ideas. Here's four umbrella areas that we can focus on to draw some ideas of inspiration that we can put out on air. So games is one for gifts, right? Gifts, games. The G radio shows should be designed so a listener obviously can play along in certain content pieces or features, right? Information, all right, so news, weather, traffic, sports, funny, can be funny. It doesn't have to be like a stand-up comedy funny. It just has to be funny, right? It could be funny. Nothing beats funny on air. But you must be truly funny. It can't be overemphasized. If you are not, don't try. Rather get someone who is funny to produce that piece or to contribute to that piece for you, right? Storytelling is likely the most crucial part of any radio presenter's content repertoire. So that means basically again, the kind of the ambience and the kind of atmosphere that you create with a listener, and that again, that connection across what you're doing there. So, if you look at page 108, I'm going to reach out to my book. I'm going to pop over to 108. There we go. Okay. So I can quickly go through this. You can sort of quickly turn to page 108. And it says applying gifts, for example. Let's go to hour one. There's obviously a breakdown hour one, two, and three. And hour one, this is a possibility. We can do a game like can win $10,000 in a pop quiz. We can include information, so news from the streets of Joburg. Funny, we can have a prank call, like for example, the ones that Wackhead does, like Darren Simpson. And this is obviously for the KFM audience. Well, that's with Gareth, so not Gareth, man, Darren is right. Stories. So Darren can learn to drive an 18-wheeler to deliver water to drought-stricken Western Cape. To the drought-stricken Western Cape. Hour two is another, let's say, game, a phono of the day, right? Information. Mzansi's Showbiz report. Three, funny, ask me feature. Just ask me anything and I will answer, right? Story, your love letters. Read out Sibs, for example, that's obviously the co-host, love letters on air, right? Our game three, or game is the radio 30 seconds, so playing 30 seconds on air. Information, Hollywood, showbiz report, funny, a classic wackhead phone prank, once again, right? Okay. And so that's obviously like a throwback, right? So a story time with Brad O'Regan, right? Okay. So let's move on. and see like there's an opportunity for promotions as well, like by using the Fubby approach. What makes engaging radio? So promotions, yes, promotions in terms of the advertising, PR, marketing side of stuff, but we can also promote different shows. We can promote upcoming interviews. We can do many things, right? The Emotional Intelligence Agency study determined that the following four kinds of emotional compelling content are what we should focus on, right? One, being funny, two, being useful, three, being beautiful, and four, inspiring. This Fubby approach, and you're going to see it's actually going to extend to a double B in a moment. Funny can include a parody, it can be slapstick, satire, it can be potty humor, so obviously like kind of dirty humor, right? It can be black humor, right? So black comedy, which is kind of dark comedy that everyone's kind that everyone, not everyone will like it, right? It's a certain taste, right? So let's go to the useful consumer reviews, for example, social good. That is being done around the country, around the world, by someone to somebody else, news analysis, news updates, and wonder. Well, like let's bring some wonder into this, something that wows them. Okay, so we can go to beautiful, the B in Fubby, right? Sensual, pop, extravagant, minimalistic, or cute are the options over there. Not all, but some of the options that we can bring out from each one of these parts in the acronym, right? Inspiring some ideas that we can give the listeners, spiritual links or spiritual context, or which you can use to create content, weird things that are interesting, and again maybe inspirational in some other way, biographical and heartwarming stories as well. So there's another B in there we can add, which is called bold. Stands for bold. Challenge what has been traditionally aired on radio by having the courage to be daring and trying new things and new ways of doing what has been done already before. So this means developing new ideas, such as hosting a very different type of interview, right? Think again. So you're gonna like bring someone in that's a big star that everyone's interviewed already, and you're gonna ask them to please interview you. Right. Okay. Activity 3C, question 1, 2, and 3 on page 109 for your homework. And redo lesson 10's activity, but this time ask students to use Fubby and GIFs in your method. I'm going to stop that share over there and I'll end the lesson. I'm going to see you in the